a shooter to probably like on planet Earth. Eric is awesome. Eric's big training paradigm for him is don't do the same rep of the same thing twice. You're going to do it once and then you change directions or change the sequence of things and you do it a completely different way. I think that's great at a level of consistency that Eric provides himself. I mean, without a doubt. I don't necessarily think I agree with that approach as far as training, because repetitions are where we start to breed consistency. I need a few more reps of something to start understanding and evaluating or building the pattern. However, it's very easy to just rep it over and over and over and over again. And then because something like that, we get lost in just trying, I get lost in just doing too many reps. Okay. So I've got what I call my rule of 10. And the rule of 10, and this is not applied to every drill or exercise that I do. However, it can be applied to anything. Okay. So for me, the rule of 10 states that I need to first establish a baseline of anything that I'm doing. So in the case, if we were to go back to AJ's April training session, I got the hiccup, something fierce. AJ's working on throttle control. And he ran it 4 different directions. Let's say we take one direction. So let's say we shoot left to right. So we've got a target at 7 yards, a target at 22 yards, and a target at 15 yards, shooting it left to right. Instead of just setting one repetition left to right and saying, okay, cool, I shot that in, and you check your timer, and you're like, cool, I shot that in 2.75 seconds. And then you look downrange and you're like, okay, I had 2 alpha, and an alpha Charlie. Yeah, that was pretty good. And then we immediately throw caution to the wind and we start what? I got to push faster. I got to go fast. I can do better than that. Instead of first developing, right, a baseline. So the rule of 3 tells me the first 3 reps are going to be to establish a consistent baseline based on what? An average. Here we are talking about those averages again, right? And not just radical averages. Right? We're not taking just the best and the worst. We're taking an average of all 3. So if I botch a draw, there's no do-over. It's like, no. I want to be 100% consistent. I want to be true to myself and honest. I'm going to give 3 reps, and those 3 reps are to establish a baseline with which I will then measure against later. So the first 3 reps are to establish a baseline. Once I build that average baseline, I will probably, for that drill, I would use hit factor to do that. And the reason I would use hit factor, so I'm going to take the points, right? 5 points for alphas, 3 points for Charlies, 1 point for deltas. I'm going to add up the points that I scored on that and divide that by the time to come up with that hit factor. And then, of course, the average of all 3 of those hit factors together gives me a baseline hit factor. Now, the next 4 repetitions, those are going to be my exploration reps. And when I get into exploration mode, this is just like Steve Anderson's, right? You got match mode, and then you've got accuracy mode, and you got speed mode. Well, this would be kind of like Steve's speed mode. My exploration mode is where I'm going to say it's okay, just like AJ gave you guys permission, it's okay to not necessarily shoot alphas as long as you're shooting to a pace that's pushing you visually and as long as you're aware visually of what's going on. Now, I'm not going to spend the entire time of my practice session exploring rep after rep after rep after rep after rep. I'm going to limit to about 4. Why 4? Because 4 is enough for if I'm shooting just beyond my speed limit or just beyond my headlights and I don't see everything the first rep, what am I going to do on the second one? No, I'm not going to slow it down. I'm going to keep going the exact same pace just like we did on the bill drill. You did multiple reps of the same speed looking for what?
Processing to catch up.
Exactly. You're looking to speed up your processing. Maybe you only picked up 2 pieces, but then you do it a rep again. The next rep at the same speed, oh, now I'm seeing 3 to 4 pieces of information. Now the next rep I'm seeing 5 to 6 pieces of information. Now I'm going to do it again. Can I see it again, or was that just a fluke? Oh my God, in 4 reps alone, I'm shooting a half second to 3/4 of a second faster on a drill that's only six rounds. But maybe I'm not 100% accountable for all the hits. I'm accountable for what I'm seeing, but I can't quite control the accuracy to that level. But the goal was to what? To see it, to be able to process it. So then the next 3 reps, I'm going to build that accountability back into it. So now the goal is not to let off the gas like I did in exploration mode. It's to stay on the gas, but to visually start controlling and physically start controlling or being aware of the accuracy and trying to bring the alpha count or the accuracy back in to what you were working in exploration mode when we get to suspend that for a bit. And my final 3 reps are going to be, again, looking at consistency. And a 3 rep average at the end, I'm looking for some sort of progression from the 3 reps at the end to what the 3 reps were in the beginning. So now I've got a better overall average of consistency to set the baseline, and I'm relying on consistency and an average of reps of consistency at the end to make sure that I'm being truly 100% accountable for the work that I'm putting in. It's not just a, well, I did a one and done in the beginning and I shot it in 3.8 seconds, all alphas, but then by the end, I explored 10 reps, but on the 10th rep, I finally decided to put the accuracy in and I say, okay, I'm shooting it in 2.72 seconds and 5 alpha, 1 Charlie. Some of us would look at that and be like, it's forgivable. I shot the Charlie. And we start to lose out on the accountability we should have on a rep, and we just look at total time. Total time only shows one part of the puzzle. So if you're just wrestling with, I got to beat the time, I got to beat the time, I got to beat the time, but you're giving yourself too much forgiveness on the accuracy side, you're spending entirely too much time working in exploration mode, and you're not putting yourself back into accountability mode. This makes sense? So that's my rule of 10. And I apply that maybe on just one string of fire. I'm going to run left to right 10 times, applying the rule of 10. After I've applied the rule of 10, I don't need to apply the rule of 10 to shooting it right to left and then front to back and back to front. I've already got to explore that here. Now these next reps shooting different directions all become, am I capable, even if I change directions, am I capable of maintaining the average accountable hit factor at the end of my exploration mode here on any of these other reps? Now I get to implement kind of Eric Graffel's take on things. Now change the directions and don't shoot the same direction more than one time. And what I'm trying to maintain is, am I accountable every single time I change directions for that one rep? And is it matching what I got to explore on one method or one sequence for 10 reps? That makes sense? You guys see the value in that?
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you ever find yourself near I guess your max as fast as you can pull a trigger, like your vision's already there? Like how do you get, I guess, into more of an exploration for reps?
It kind of depends. If this were bill drills,
You just move it back to make it more difficult?
right? Yep. Something to challenge you visually, right? So if you moved it back further, am I going to be able to implement 14 splits at a 15-yard bill drill?
Not at first.
Right, exactly right. And that's how we push the progression.
Gotcha.
If it were with transitions or whatever, there's going to come a point of diminished returns where you're like, man, I'm setting these targets almost shoulder width apart from each other or target width apart. Then needs to turn into, you know what? Perhaps your throttle control drill, maybe the 7-yard target's way over here on this side of the berm, your 25-yard target's way down in the middle of the berm, and your 15-yard target's way over here on the right side of the berm. Them some big old transitions to have to swing that gun left to right to. Exactly. Exactly. Anybody have any questions on this? Do you find this useful information? This kind of help direct maybe like what we were talking about, like where do I go from here? What do I do? Having a plan or being able to implement a plan. I like the split routine stuff. That, like I said, that's something I got from Mike Seeklander, 10 years ago. And the thing with Mike, I was like, he's like, and at that time I was actually going to the gym and working out. He's like, you seem to be a pretty fit individual. How do you go to the gym and work out? And I was like, oh, well, I do this and I do this and I do this. He goes, how'd you come up with that? I'm like, oh, well, I talked to a guy that I trained with a lot. And he's like, yeah, so you talked to somebody that was pretty experienced in that, right? I go, yeah. And he goes, yeah. And how's that working for you? I'm like, man, I made a lot of gains that way. Yep, I'll bet you did. Because you were working out with a purpose, right? You were focused in your efforts to better this particular portion of your body versus the next portion. He goes, how come you're not treating shooting the same way? And I was like, you genius son of a bitch, you. Like, how come I didn't think about that? Josh.
You have a really good book about this?
You just did your book.
I'm wondering if we could be looking forward to that.
He
Possibly.
did an audio book.
Possibly.
I'll proofread it for you as long as I get part of the royalty. I've written a book of my own.
But the great thing is with this, I don't need to write a book on how to dry fire, right? This right here, just like I said, it gives you the roadmap, how to use those other resources that other great instructors have already put in the time into writing, and using those resources. I don't want to reinvent the wheel, but if we can help polish the sharp edges on Ben's wheel or Steve Anderson's wheel and allow it to be a little bit more digestible for you and be able to utilize those resources that probably for many of us we've got, and they've got about 1.5 inches thick of dust on them. And we're like, that's bullshit. That's too much. I don't even know what to do with it. Now you can pull that thing off, blow the dust off of it and crack it open. Hey, I've got a great way to start implementing those drills that those guys already wrote out. They've already done the work. Anybody else have a question? Dan?
The whole book thing though, but like I think how you describe and explain, like you're not reinventing the wheel, but like you just said, you're kind of polishing that up. I think coming from you, it makes, or at least after this class, or almost through this class, it makes more sense understanding that stuff.
I appreciate that.
I think just kind of reiterating some things, but in your own
missing
words,
links.
it just makes it a little bit more sense.
I appreciate that. That, again, it's why AJ and I decided this class needed to exist. Unfortunately, we found nobody else was addressing these questions. Guess what, guys? These weren't just questions you guys were coming to us with. These were questions we had and still have to this day. They're questions that, like, I remember the phone call. I remember the day he called me and said, hey, I got something I want to run by you. How often do you teach a class and a student will come to you after that class and say, man, that was a great class, Tim? You shake your hand and they're like, now if there was just some way that somebody could help guide me into how I put all that stuff into practice, right? And AJ and I are both like standing there like, we just gave you the easy button. You just do the drills, you just do the exercises. But most people say, yeah, that'd be great if I had 500 rounds or 1,000 rounds like I've just spent in 2 days with you guys doing the drills, but I don't. How do I break it down into digestible components to practice on my own? And I was like, I like where your head's at. And so, yeah, a 5-second question turned into, what, about 3 hours on the phone?
The first time.
That very first time. Then turned into another 2-hour like talk back and forth. How do we start building this information? How do we start breaking this down? We thought we had it all worked out in an 8-hour class. We were ready, and we did an 8-hour class, and both of us went home and we were like, we were not indeed ready for this. There's way more information to cover than an 8-hour class is going to give us an opportunity to do. Perhaps we turn this into a 2-day class, and as you can see, this is why. This is also why we try to warn you beforehand, this ain't a shooting class. This is a how to practice class with a little bit of shooting intermixed in, just to give you an opportunity to understand why it's important. So, any other questions? Are you ready to maybe get back out on the range and try some stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. AJ?